Hello Hunters! Azortharion here, and welcome to my second video covering all the changes in the Hunter rework for the War Within expansion. Today we're focusing on Beast Mastery, and I'll be going through every talent, both old and new, and discussing how they might impact builds, playstyle, flavor, and feel. Along the way, I'll share my thoughts on what could be designed better or changed in my opinion. My hope is that you'll watch this video, form your own opinions, and share your feedback with Blizzard. We're currently in a crucial feedback stage, and your input could make a real difference, so make sure to head over to the forums and let your thoughts be known. One thing to get out of the way about Beast Mastery on the beta is that it is severely bugged. So many talents don't work properly, or they don't work at all. For example, Animal Companion right now, if you spec into this, your second pet will just not do anything, and you're still getting the obviously minus 35% damage on your main pet. So in many scenarios where you play BM on the beta right now, just keep in mind it'll do very low damage, but you can still learn a thing or two about how it's going to feel for you. And you will just have to trust that the bugs will be fixed in due course, and that we can, experience the numbers as well. And yeah, for all the talents that are bugged, I'll be discussing the talents based on how I assume they're supposed to work, intended to work, and not necessarily how they do or don't work on the beta at the moment. I'm also making this video with raid testing later today in mind. Unfortunately, I won't be able to stream raid testing myself, though I will be participating. And in the description below, you can find some talent strings that I recommend trying out to have a productive test tonight. With that said, as I just mentioned, if you do plan to test this Beast Mastery, particularly with an AoE build, because you require Animal Companion to get the AoE talents, you should expect fairly low DPS numbers that are not reflective of real performance, so, obviously don't doom when you do no damage, it is mostly because of the bug. As always, if you want to support me being a full-time hunter, please check out my Patreon in the description below. There you can get the Hunter UI that you see on screen right now, and WeGars, and personal coaching from me on a weekly or monthly basis, access to my min-maxing Hunter Compendium, and much more. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So first off, starting at the top of the tree is Kill Command, we know this one. Cobra Shot, same as normal as well, in every single way. Animal Companion, same as normal in every single way. Obviously bugged in the beta right now, but don't worry so much about that. Barbed Shot, also same as normal. Pack Tactics, so passive focus generation increased by 100%. This is also something we had before, but you may not have thought about it, because it was always just one of those locked in things. And still is, really. Aspect of the Beast, also the same as always. So the damage and healing of your pet's abilities, that only affects your bite, claw, and smack ability from your pet. So if I just summon a pet here, it will not affect the pet's auto attack speed, but if I go to the pet up here, this ability, you can see my UI is a little bit scuffed, but the bite here, this is what will be increased by Aspect of the Beast, as well as passive effects, such as in the case of this pet, the pathfinding. So this is normally 8% increased movement speed, but with Aspect of the Beast, it's up to 12%, because it's a 50% increase. That's the second part of the talent right here. Next up is War Order. So this used to be a 2-pointer, now it is a 1-pointer. And I believe that it is now, we're getting the value of the old 1-pointer talent. So it's a 25% chance for Barbed Shot to reset the cooldown of Kill Command. Some will recall a moment when it was actually 100%. Which was really strong, but a little bit overpowered perhaps. A 25% chance means it's a bit more of an event when it happens. And now, of course, they'll tune things accordingly. But this is sort of like a personal preference thing of what you preferred. But in any case, it is 25% chance now. Thrill of the Hunt is also now a 1-pointer, and you'll notice that it is the old 1-pointer that we're now getting for, again, the price of 1 point. So it only stacks up to twice, rather than 4 times, which was the old 2-pointer. And you get a 2% crit chance on your abilities, not trinkets and so on. This is a common misunderstanding. While Thrill of the Hunt says that it increases your critical strike chance by 2% and so on, what it really means is that it increases the critical strike chance of your hunter abilities by that, which means that Thrill of the Hunt doesn't affect trinket procs and so on, or any form of borrowed power, like for example Black Arrow damage. Or actually Black Arrow should be included, but anything that's outside of the scope of your class kit will not be affected by this crit. And yeah, it stacks up to 2 times, so we're going back to tracking Frenzy instead of Thrill of the Hunt again. Next up is the first properly new talent, which is Go for the Throat. Kill Command deals increased critical strike damage equal to 100% of your critical strike chance. So what does that mean? Well, I have 34% crit right now on the beta, as you can see. And that means that Kill Command's critical strike damage baseline is going to be, instead of 200%, it's going to be 234%. So, you know, instead of a crit doing, let's say Kill Command does 100 damage, it crits, it would normally do 200 damage, but thanks to this talent and me having 34% crit, it will now do 234 damage. This obviously significantly increases the value of crit for Beast Mastery, along with other mechanics. Like for example, I think, so this one's Serrated Tips, which is from the class tree that I discussed in my previous video, which was yesterday about the class tree. And if you do wonder about the class tree, check out the description for the link to the class tree video. So yeah, between mechanics like Serrated Tips, and in the case of BM, Go for the Throat, crit value for hunters is significantly increased. And that is why you can also see that I've tried to go for crit on as many items as I can for the raid test tonight. You know, that it doesn't necessarily 100% mean that crit is the best stat in all cases, but it's going to be fairly strong at the very least. Next up is multi-shot as we know it, and this I should actually mention about our AoE kit. So our AoE kit used to be 4 points with 1 point for multi-shot, 2 points for Beast Cleave, and 1 point for Kill Cleave. Now Beast Cleave is a 1-pointer, giving the same effect as the old 2-pointer. So the cost of our AoE kit has been reduced by 1 talent point. Not as much as we wanted, because as many of you will know, Beast Mastery has historically, and currently is, one of the specs that lose the most single target damage when going for an AoE build. By reducing the cost of Beast Cleave to 1 point, that is partly mitigated, but it is still going to be on the higher end of that scale of specs that lose quite a bit of single target when they go for AoE builds. So I wish, you know, also because multi-shot has basically no damage value without like Beast Cleave, because multi-shot for BM just negative damage, like absolutely almost no damage. So with that in mind, it would be nice if this like multi-shot was just removed and made baseline, and then, you know, our AoE kit would only cost 2 points. Next up is Laceration. When your pets critically strike, which they will a reasonable amount, because, you know, we kind of like crit as BM hunters now, they cause their target to bleed for 15% of the damage dealt over 6 seconds. So this is basically the Master Marksman mechanic that you'll recall from the old class tree, and you'll also may have spotted that it has now been moved from the old class tree into the new marksmanship tree, which we'll be looking at in the next video. This is basically just a BM version where instead of looking at like special attacks from marksmanship, or in general, it's just whenever your pets critically strike with any ability, kill command, basic attacks, melee attacks, they'll cause their target to bleed for 15% of the damage dealt over 6 seconds, which is basically a 15% increase to the damage of all your pet crits. So in a sense, this is another 15% crit damage on top of this, which is, you know, is depending on your crit for kill command only. So yeah, even more crit value for BM, and pretty powerful. Next up is Cobra Senses, which is, as we know it, we've pretty much never used this, basically because it's a pretty bad talent. Cobra Shot reduces the cooldown of kill command by an additional second. So we're just not really, so, I mean, kill command CDI is always nice, but for the cost of a talent point, only 1 second is just not that much. When, like, the spec is basically about ending up casting as few Cobras as possible, and as many kill commands and Barbed shots as possible. I suspect that the relative value of this talent will have gone up now, because of the War Order's nerf. So our Barbed shots have less of a chance to give us kill commands than they used to, and that means that, you know, buffing Cobra Shot's ability to bring back kill commands will be a little bit stronger than before. Obviously, we don't have sims yet, so I cannot objectively evaluate the DPS value of all these talents. It'll be relatively a bit stronger than before, that much is obvious, but if that's enough to actually pick it, we just don't know yet. Next up is Improved Kill Command. Kind of a boring filler talent, because it's literally just 1 point and kill command damage increased by 5%, which is, you know, ultimately pretty weak. Luckily, it's not really mandatory, because there are other good ways of getting to the talents below it, but yeah, a little bit boring. Next is Alpha Predator. You may recognize this from the class tree of old, of Dragonflight. It has now been moved to the spec tree, and it has the same effect of kill command now has 2 charges, insanely strong, and deals 15% increased damage, also insanely strong. This is one of those talents that will probably just be running absolutely all the time. Next up is Beast Cleave. Aside from what I've mentioned, it becoming a 2-pointer to a 1-pointer, nothing has really changed for this. Beast Cleave is the one you know and love, or don't love. Let me know in the comments. Alright, next up is Hunter's Prey. So Hunter's Prey was hidden off to the left side of the Dragonflight spec tree and pretty much never used because it was kind of out of the way and just not that strong. Kill command has a 10% chance to reset the cooldown of kill shot and causes your next kill shot to be usable on any target regardless of the target's health. Now, On the surface, like by itself, this talent is just not all that strong because Kill Shot is not all that strong for BM. The reason Kill Shot is so much stronger for survival and marksmanship is that they have various mechanics like their masteries that like affect the Kill Shot damage, whereas of course BM's mastery is pure pet damage, which does not include Kill Shot. So at first glance, not a very strong talent, but you'll see that it kind of relates to other powerful talents that we'll get to. Killer Cobra. So, okay, one confusion I should get to right now before I say it again later on and you get confused. There are two Killer Cobra talents. There's this one, Killer Cobra, and we'll see what that does. And then there's this Killer Cobra. I expect that this one will eventually be renamed, or at least one of them will be renamed, because we currently have two talents called the exact same thing that do very different things. Let's call this one Killer Cobra Serpent Sting, because that's what it does. Kill Shot applies Serpent Sting for 18 seconds. Serpent Sting is the same thing you know and love. So with Hunter's Prey and Killer Cobra, we'll regularly be able to cast kill shots regardless of the target's current health, and those kill shots will apply Serpent Sting, which is a significant power increase to kill shots and makes Hunter's Prey a much more interesting talent. So whether this is enough for both of these talents to be worth picking, time will tell. But now Beast Mastery has a way of proccing Serpent Sting, which was previously reserved for the other two specs only. Next up is Wild Call. So your auto shot critical strikes have a 20% chance to reset the cooldown of Barbed Shot. This is just like normal. I believe, my memory escapes me right now whether this used to be a 2-pointer. Pretty sure it's a 1-pointer. But yeah, this has existed for, a long time. It's not really required for Frenzy uptime anymore because of Savagery. So Savagery is a talent that we currently have on Dragonflight, and they will continue to have, which makes, it says Barbed Shot lasts longer, but really it means Frenzy. And so Barbed Shot's base cooldown is 12 seconds. But if you look on the right side of the screen now, you can see with my 23% haste, the cooldown is a bit under 10 seconds. Basically, at 20% haste and Savage Respect, you will be able to maintain Frenzy at 100% uptime if you press Barbed Shot perfectly on cooldown with no external help or resets whatsoever. In other words, the presence of Savagery, which also improves kill command damage by 10%, also does this on Dragonflight, basically makes Wild Call significantly less valuable. Now, there's more value to Barbed Shot than just being able to maintain Frenzy with it. Of course, Barbed Shots have a bit of extra damage attached to them via the next talent, which we conveniently segue over to, Stomp. Stomp is the same as normal. When you cast Barbed Shot, your pet stomps the ground, dealing 28k, a significant amount of damage to all nearby targets, roughly a third of a kill command or so, which is pretty solid. And so this provides additional value to Barbed Shot, or Wild Call in general, especially for AoE, where these stomps will do more damage. Next up is Kindred Spirits, which is also a talent from Dragonflight that no one basically ever used because it's just terrible. Even in the War Within, it's a 2-pointer that gives your maximum focus and your pet's maximum focus a 10 increase of 10. So up to 20 increase to 120 max focus for both you and your pet if you pick 2 points. You'll basically never ever pick this talent because it's simply not, max focus is just not a very valuable trait for the way BM works. Because it's not like we pool focus and then unleash burst windows. Our focus regenerates quickly and we're just constantly generating and spending it. Increasing the maximum is just not very valuable at all. Yeah, so kind of a dead talent that I just think they honestly should remove and think of something else for. It wasn't picked in all of Dragonflight. It's not going to be picked in the War Within. Just very underwhelming. Next up is Kill Cleave, just as normal. Basically turns your kill command into, makes Beast Cleave encompass your kill command. So that's all good. Training Expert, 2 points. And each point gives 2.5% pet damage dealt. So reasonably strong, but not actually as mandatory as you might think. Now, it has some pretty good connections. For example, if you want to get Bestial Wrath, which you probably do, and you're not running an AoE build, it's pretty much mandatory because it's the only way to connect to Bestial Wrath other than Kill Cleave, which we wouldn't run in a single target build, and Kindred Spirits, which is just straight up terrible. So, but let's say, yeah, for AoE builds, maybe Training Expert is not actually all that insane. So even on current live servers on Dragonflight, We only run a single point of this 2-point training expert. So yeah, we'll see about that. Next up is Die Beast, which is the same as usual. So, 20-second cooldown, summons a beast that will do basically auto attack damage and increase your haste by 5% for 8 seconds. There's some other mechanics attached to this that make it a little bit more interesting, but yeah. Next up is a Murder of Crows. Now, this is one of the oldest hunter talents of all time, but it is very different now. It used to be a 1-minute cooldown that did like pretty hefty damage over like 15 seconds. Now, it is every 5 casts of Kill Command summons a Murder of Crows. And Murder of Crows is just summons a flock of crows to attack your target. I like how they say, like, it's called a Murder of Crows, but then it says it summons a flock of crows. I'm not so sure of what the correct wording is, but it feels like it should just be summoning anyway. So yeah, to attack your target, dealing really heavy, so basically the equivalent of, let me just do the math, roughly 3 kill commands worth of damage over 15 seconds, so quite strong for single target. And this will happen on every 5th cast of kill command, so if you just do the math, like this is a significant single target DPS increase. One problem with it that I have, and this maybe not so common in single target fights, but certainly AoE things, is that because it happens on every 5th cast of kill command, you don't have a tremendous amount of control over whether this happens. And if you do not choose your targets carefully, and if you do not have a weak aura to track how many kill commands you're currently on, it's totally conceivable that you'll end up casting crows on a target that is just about to die. Oldies will remember that crows used to reset its cooldown if a target died with it, and this was a cool way to get around this problem. But the new version does not seem to have this sort of mitigation in it. I really wish it did. So a few suggestions that I've been reading about have been, so instead of being every 5 casts, it could either turn every 5th cast of kill command into a Murder of Crows so that it's much more obvious like what's gonna happen, especially for someone who doesn't have like an advanced UI. Or it could simply be, what's the other suggestion I had written down here that I've now gone away from? Yeah, so there's another one which could be, if a target dies while affected by it, it will either jump to a new target that's nearby that is not dead, maybe the highest health nearby target within 10 yards or something like that. Or it could be if the target dies while affected by the Murder of Crows, it'll simply make your next kill command apply a new Murder of Crows. Because right now, you'll basically need a pretty high-tech UI that tracks your kill command counter to see when your next Murder of Crows is going to happen. Or you'll potentially waste quite a bit of value of this, not just in Mythic Plus, but especially there. But also, let's say if there's a big ad on a raid encounter, and it's just about to die, you kind of don't want your 15-second super powerful dot to happen on it. You want to save that for the boss that you're about to go back to hitting. So yeah, but powerful for single target. Next up is Barrage. So this used to be a class 3 talent. It is one of the most infamous hunter abilities of all time. And it's basically what you'll remember, except for BM, it now grants Beast Cleave. I should describe what it does just for those who haven't, like, new to the game and haven't played with the old Barrage. Rapidly fires a spray of shots for 3 seconds baseline, but scales with haste, dealing an average of a kill command's worth of damage to all nearby enemies in front of you. Obviously, when I say kill command's worth of damage, if you have higher mastery than I do, a quite low mastery here in the beta, with most of my stats being in crit and haste. Your kill command damage will scale with the mastery, but the Barrage won't. So Barrage is not a lot of damage on its own. However, it also grants Beast Cleave by simply activating Beast Cleave and maintaining that for 6 seconds baseline. But for example, there are mechanics specifically in the Pack Leader hero talent tree that when you kill command, it increases the duration of Beast Cleave by 1 second. So Barrage basically becomes this sort of burst AoE option for Beast Mastery. You use it both for its initial damage over 3 seconds. You might even cancel it if you have something more interesting to press, because again, Barrage on its own doesn't do a lot of damage. But it's basically a way to invest a single talent point, and for that you get essentially at minimum 30% uptime on Beast Cleave, and you can choose when you get that uptime. Like, so if it's 6 second duration baseline of Beast Cleave, 20 second cooldown on Barrage. If you do that on cooldown, you have 30% Beast Cleave uptime. Now, if you combine that with the Covering Fire talent from Pack Leader, then you can potentially extend this Beast Cleave even further, and potentially make Barrage even stronger in this manner. So that means you can get, let's say if you can get how many kill commands can we get into a 6-second window? I mean, if you prepare everything nicely and get a bit lucky, maybe 4. And then we're looking at if you can do that reliably. I don't think you can do it reliably, but you can do it sometimes. 50% Beast Cleave uptime just from a single talent point investment. One thing to note about that, however. Beast Cleave is nice and all, but a lot of BM's AoE value is not just in Beast Cleave, but it's from the Kill Cleave, Beast Cleave interaction. If you are not spec'd into Kill Cleave, and you need to be spec'd into Beast Cleave to be spec'd into Kill Cleave, then the Beast Cleave that you get from Barrage will be much weaker than you might expect. And I think that maybe something could be done about this here, like reshuffling the talent points. And I mean, another way would simply be making Kill Cleave baseline part of Beast Cleave. That would go a long way to solving this problem. Also because Beast Cleave just doesn't feel all that good without Kill Cleave to back it up. Because without Kill Cleave, Beast Cleave is just a passive that your pet does, and it doesn't like basically just splashes its melee and special attacks onto other targets, which is significantly weaker than, of course, Kill Cleave, but it's also just boring. Like, there's no interaction, and it feels bad to know that, okay, you hit Barrage, and you have, like, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds of Beast Cleave going on, but because you didn't invest, the massive, free talent points just to get down to Kill Cleave, when you press Kill command after activating this Beast Cleave, it's just going to hit like a wet noodle because you don't have Kill Cleave and the Kill command isn't going to cleave. I think that just feels bad, and it makes Barrage much weaker and less interesting than it could have been if Kill Cleave perhaps was baseline. So, I mean, if there's one thing at the top of my wish list for Beastmaster, it will probably be either multi-shot or Kill Cleave being made baseline, or like baking Kill Cleave into Beast Cleave, or both. Both would be very good, but beggars can't be choosers. But yeah, the idea of Barrage is, for one talent point, you basically get a burst AoE option. However, it's not the best burst AoE option because Kill Cleave is required to really make BM AoE bursty. Next up is Savage AoE. We kind of talked about this. Extends the duration of Frenzy by 2 seconds to 10 seconds, which means with 20% haste, you do not need any Barbed shot resets or any external help whatsoever to maintain 100% uptime on your Frenzy. Next up is Beastie Wrath. It's exactly as we remember it. It does kill commands worth of damage when you press it, and then increases all the damage done by you and your pets for 25% for 15 seconds. And it removes crowd control from your pet, which is more of a PvP thing. Next up is Dire Command. So this used to be a 2-pointer. It used to be a 3-pointer, then it became a 2-pointer, and now it is a 1-pointer. Your kill command has a 30% chance to also summon a Die Beast to attack your target for 8 seconds. Reasonably strong. Not only does this Die Beast that you spawn do damage, as we can read from the Die Beast talent itself, but it'll also increase your haste by 5% for 8 seconds. So this is pretty solid. And especially for one talent point, which is giving the same value as the old 2-pointer. Decent value, absolutely a decent value talent. Next up is a new talent called Huntmaster's Call. Every 3 casts of Die Beast, and I should say every 3 casts of Die Beast includes the Die Beast procs that you get from Die Command. So that's worth knowing. And you sound the Horn of Valor, summoning either Haiti or Fenrir to battle. If you summon Haiti, and this just seems to be a 50-50 chance, like which one you're going to summon, there's no way to control it, so you're just going to get one of these buffs randomly. Obviously, one is going to be better than the other, but there's no way to control it, so not worth worrying too much about. Haiti simply increases the damage of all your pets by 15 seconds for the duration of that Die Beast, which is going to be 8 seconds. 15% pet damage done for 8 seconds is pretty damn strong, and you can activate this quite often, so Huntmaster's Call seems quite strong. And what worth noting is that this is not like a target debuff, it's the damage of all your pets by 15%. So that means this actually has pretty significant AoE value. Like if your pet, like all of your Kill Cleave and Beast Cleave damage is going up by 15% every time you summon one of these, well then suddenly every 3rd Die Beast is insanely strong. And the alternative is that you proc Fenrir, which is pounces your primary target, inflicting a heavy bleed that deals basically 3 kill commands worth of damage again over 8 seconds and grants you 10% haste. So 10% haste is really good and improves, basically improves our overall damage by 10%, which includes pets. And it also does 3 kill commands worth of damage on your primary target, which is usually the Prio target. Let's imagine like a Mythic Plus scenario. So this is quite strong. Both procs are strong. And honestly, they seem fairly balanced to me. I think for AoE, I'd prefer Haiti proc While for single target, I prefer a Fenrir one, but I would not be like, it's not going to be one of those things where it's like, oh, I just got 2 bad procs in a row. I wish I'd gotten the other one. You'll pretty much be happy no matter what procs here. So yeah, pretty interesting and cool talent. One point of, so this is exactly the same problem as, well, not quite the same, but just like how Murder of Crows activates on every 5th cast of Kill Command, sort of whether you like it or not, so will Huntmaster's Call. And the problem is if you get a Fenrir proc on a dying mob, and you know that 8-second bleed that it applies just kind of goes into nothing, that's going to feel kind of bad. One thing that's better about Huntmaster's Call relative to Crows is, while Crows is a debuff on the target, meaning the target needs to be alive to get the value, most of the value of Huntmaster's Call is in the 15% flat damage buff to your pets. Which, you know, even if the target dies immediately after proccing this, you're still going to have that 15% pet damage. And it's going to be the 10% haste, which is of course also going to last beyond the target's lifespan. So I have the same mechanical problem with it as Murder of Crows, but to a lesser magnitude, so to speak. Next up is Die Frenzy. So this just makes, Die Beast last an additional 5 seconds, from 8 to 5 seconds, which is a significant increase. The tooltip is a little bit weird, but Die Frenzy also existed before, so we're just assuming that it's going to do the same thing. And this should extend the debuff value of the Hades proc. Probably not the Fenrir one, because that one is like explicitly 8 seconds, while the Hades damage increase is sort of up to interpretation here. But yeah, so assuming that it is directly tied to the duration of the Die Beast that you get, then the Die Frenzy should provide quite a bit of extra value out of that damage done by all of your pets thing. Another thing to note about Huntmaster's Call is that the best thing about it is that you don't need Die Beast to proc it. Like, you don't need the ability. However, you do need to spec Die Beast in order to proc it, in order to get the talent, which just feels kind of bad. So I think it would be a lot better if Die Beast and Die Command maybe exchanged places in the tree. Because then you could get a Die Command, which is a great way of ensuring Huntmaster's Call procs without having to invest into the additional button. And that's another thing. So without having to invest in this additional button, which is quite a boring button. Die Beast, when you press it, 5% haste is not a lot. It's hard to notice. And Die Beast has no further interaction beyond you just pressing the button and seeing this Die Beast charge in. So Die Beast is just kind of, I'd argue, a pretty bad talent. Not necessarily like numerically, but just gameplay wise. It adds an extra button to a spec where, you know, most people like BM for how few buttons it has. Some people would like it to have more buttons, but we are getting an extra button in Explosive Shot and some other stuff. I just think shifting the places of Die Beast and Die Command would be significantly better, because it means you don't have to invest in the extra button to benefit from Huntmaster's Call, which is actually quite a fun passive ability. You can just rely on Die Command for that. And if you do want to double invest and get even more, then you can choose to do so. So yeah, a swapsies here would be nice. Alright, next up is Killer Instinct. So this used to be a class 3 talent as well. Kill Command deals 50% increased damage against enemies below 35% health. This is quite a significant damage increase for Execute, and it's it's a big Execute, meaning it starts already at 35% HP. I think that especially for like longer raid fights, we'll be picking this most of the time, just because Execute damage is often disproportionately useful. Generally getting the boss quicker from 35 to 0% HP has more relative value than getting it quicker from, say, 100% to 70% HP. Of course, this is super dependent on the boss, but Execute damage is a valuable profile. And between Killer Instinct, which is a 2-pointer, which is a little disappointing, I feel like it could easily have been a 1-pointer. And between this and Unnatural Causes from the class tree, and again, check the video for the class tree in the description below, your damage over time effects deal 15% increased damage below 20% HP. So that basically gives all 3 Hunter specs a little bit of passive Execute. And Killer Instinct just gives BM specifically a large chunk of extra Execute damage. So yeah, big fan of this, but I wish it was a 1-pointer. Master Handler is the one we know, and well, let's see how you feel about it. Each time Barbed Shot deals damage, the cooldown of Kill Command is reduced by 0.5 seconds. So on a single target, not really all that impressive, but especially in a burst scenario on AoE, where you can reliably multi-shot your Barbed Shot, multi-dot your barb shot and thereby get a lot of barb shot ticks out. You can end up spamming a lot of kill commands back to back just because all those barb shots are ticking and reducing the cooldown of kill command, and that can be quite fun. We'll see if like the numbers and the sims say that it is actually worth doing this, both on single target and AoE. Generally a bit more of an AoE oriented talent, but it can also be powerful in single target. Of course, it is giving CDR on our most powerful ability. Next up is Barbed Breath, which is the mechanic that most people kind of take for granted. It's the part that reduces the cooldown of Bestial Wrath by 12 seconds whenever you press Barb Shot, which is all the time. So this is basically what enables, Beast Cleave uptimes of Bestial Wrath uptimes of upwards of like 50% or more, depending on the tier set and everything that we have for that season. Obviously fun, like pressing Bestial Wrath more often is pretty fun. It is kind of expensive, and this especially when paired with Scent of Blood, and we'll get into that in a moment. But yeah. Next up is Explosive Venom. So Explosive Venom doesn't actually quite work how it says it works. So it says that every 5 casts of Cobra Shot or Multi-Shot will apply Serpent Sting to target's head. So alongside Killer Cobra, the one that applies Serpent Sting, this basically gives us another way of applying Serpent Sting. It doesn't quite work how it says it does, however. What actually happens in game, and I think it's a bug, but I'm not completely sure, is that every 5 casts of Cobra Shot, your next Multi-Shot and Multi-Shot only will apply Serpent Sting to all targets hit. But if you follow that sort of train of logic to its conclusion, it means that this basically has abysmal single target value, which feels kind of bad. Because the only way to actually get the Serpent Sting on a single target out of this would be to press Multi-Shot on single target. And as we've talked about, Multi-Shot does like very close to no damage for Beast Mastery, so that would just feel terrible. The problem is, like, if you're spec'd into it, let's say you're spec'd into it for like an AoE situation, Mythic Plus, and you're on a boss, it might actually be worth doing this, but the only way that you'll know it's worth doing is, again, now you have to get a weak aura, and you have to track how many casts of Cobra Shot you have, and you'll need to press Multi-Shot on a single target, because a Serpent Sting's worth of damage is worth more than a Cobra Shot would have been. Assuming that is indeed the case, which it pretty much is, because if we look here, Serpent Sting is 12.3k damage instantly, and then 86k, this is just with my gear, but the relative numbers are the same, right? 12.3k plus 86k, so roughly 98k damage, and it's nature damage. And we compare that to Cobra Shot, which is 85k physical damage. Physical damage pretty much globally gets reduced by like 30% because of armor on the target you're fighting. So the real damage difference is casting a Multi-Shot to get a Serpent Sting going on a single target is worth close to 100k damage with my gear. We're talking relative here. Let's just say it's close to 100 damage, while a Cobra Shot would have been roughly 60 damage. Now, of course, Cobra Shot has a bit of value beyond its raw damage, such as reducing the cooldown of a kill command. But even then, like, you can easily imagine that running this in Mythic Plus would cause some pretty degenerate play styles on single targets, especially if, well, I guess, particularly given that you need a weak aura to properly keep track of Explosive Venom. So I think a redesign here is warranted, or just a fix to it, really. But the thing is, okay, let's say they fix it, and the Multi-Shot thing is just, because I did say I would be evaluating based on how I think they're supposed to work. Let's say we do that, but now, every 5 casts of Cobra Shot, your next Cobra Shot, or your Cobra Shot will apply Serpent Sting. Once again, that is one of those things where that could hit at the worst possible time on a mob where you really don't want to get Serpent Sting right now. And so now we have 3 mechanics, Murder of Crows, Huntmaster's Call, and Explosive Venom, that all work in this, like, every X casts of Y activate set, and usually set is something with a duration on the target that you could waste if it procced at the wrong time. So yes, I think across all 3 of these talents, some thinking is needed on how to mitigate that. Now, it is time for the most broken talent in the BM spec tree of the War Within, at least right now. Basilisk Collar. Each damage over time effect on a target increases the damage they receive from your pet's attacks by 10%. 10% per dot. How many dots do you have? Well, there's certainly Barb Shot. There's potentially Serpent Sting. There's potentially a Murder of Crows. There's potentially Bloodshed. I probably missed some, but you get the point. So really, for 2 points investment, depending on exactly the talent you grab and all that stuff, you can get, 20, 30, 40% increased global pet damage on all the targets affected. And of course, Serpent Sting is potentially multidottable. Barb Shot is, manually multidottable, and so on. So, yeah, that is obviously extremely powerful. It is probably too powerful because it kind of turns like it's so powerful that we're gonna have to build around making it as good as possible, which means Beast Mastery becomes a spec. Like build crafting for Beast Mastery is like, how can we fit as many dots in as possible to make our pets do more damage thanks to all the dots? Well, that is a way of build crafting, I suppose, but it's not the theme I have in mind when I think of Beast Mastery. When I think of maximizing dots, I think of Affliction Warlocks and Shadow Priests and like Feral Druids. So it's probably overtuned just because of the downstream effects it can have on the other choices we make. But that is indeed how it looks right now. So, and I don't know, it's not bugged or anything, it's just insanely broken. Just by the nature of its tuning and how it works. Some dots will not count. I don't have a perfect memory of which dots count and which don't, but the point is still the same, right? Like you're going to be trying to stack all the dots that potentially count. All right, next up, Call of the Wild. Same one that we always know. Oh, well, since Dragonflight, mid-Dragonflight made it actually worth using. It's pretty strong. It gives a hunter basically a 2-minute burst profile, and it does a pretty good job of that. Next up is Killer Cobra 2. So this is the other Killer Cobra, and it's the old Killer Cobra. While Beastly Wrath is active, Cobra Shot resets the cooldown of Kill Command. So Beastly Wrath is active quite a bit, just because of Barbed Wrath, and potentially Center Blood, which we'll get to in a moment. And so the problem with this is, firstly, it's a bit weak. We've pretty much never used it, even though we've had it available to us in Dragonflight. It's undertuned, but also I don't like how it makes Cobra senses, which we discussed earlier, and it's a talent that might be getting made stronger as a indirect result of the War Order's nerf. It basically just invalidates it during our cooldown, but Beastly Wrath is not really a cooldown. I mean, that's something to debate in the comments below. But it has such a high duration that many would consider it not a cooldown. In any case, the majority of our damage is done during Beastly Wrath, and if you pick these two talents together that specifically cause Cobra Shot to basically be more powerful at giving you kill commands, well, one talent, Killer Cobra, completely invalidates the other one for a significant period of time. And I just don't like that interaction. Like, it's not a huge problem because both talents are probably undertuned and we're not going to use them. But let's say like Cobra Senses was pretty well tuned. Well, that's basically going to lock us out of Killer Cobra and vice versa. I don't think that's optimal design. Alright, next up is Scent of Blood. Activating Beastly Wrath grants 1 charge of Barb Shot per point. This one is another one of those, along with Barbed Wrath, that causes Beastly Wrath's effective cooldown to be much lower and Beastly Wrath uptimes to be significantly higher. So obviously 2 point is quite expensive because you have to invest a point per charge, but it's quite powerful because when you it basically means that if you dump both of your Barb Shot charges before activating Beastly Wrath, well, you'll get 2 back instantly, and that's an immediate minus 24 seconds on the cooldown of Beastly Wrath. So Scent of Blood hugely helps with Beastly Wrath uptime. Whether it's worth running in the long run is something that remains to be seen, but yeah, that is what it does. And one thing I wanted to note, so I mentioned how Wild Call has more value than just giving Frenzy uptime, and I specifically highlighted Stomp for this, but another obvious value of having more Barb Shots is that it will reduce the cooldown of Beastly Wrath and increase its uptime. So yeah, just making sure I get that in there. Next up is Brutal Companion. When Barb Shot causes Frenzy to stack up to 3, your pet will immediately use its special attack and deal 50% bonus damage. So its special attack is the basic attack that we talked about. So the game kind of uses the terms special attack and basic attack interchangeably. But it basically refers to the bite, claw, or smack ability that you get. And so when you, and it says when Barb Shot, actually, I'm just gonna take a brief look over here at the talent calculator because I just want to make sure that this didn't change. So previously, it worked in such a way that even if you already have 3 stacks of Frenzy, and then you use your Barb Shot, it will still trigger. But the wording of the talent is when Barb Shot causes Frenzy to stack up to 3. But if it's already at 3, is it considered by the game to be stacking up to 3? Well, previously, the wording hasn't changed. So with that in mind, I'm just going to assume that it's going to work the same. But of course, this depends on testing. But I'm like 90% sure that this will stay the same. In other words, when you Barb Shot, for the most part, your pet will immediately use its bite attack and deal 50% bonus damage. So an extra powerful basic attack. And this is super powerful with Pack Leader. So a little bit of a brief diversion over to the Pack Leader hero talent tree here, but I won't stay here for long. So your pet's basic attack critical strikes increase your critical strike damage by 5%. So by giving us more basic attacks via pressing Barb Shots, this talent directly and powerfully feeds into several mechanics of the Pack Leader hero talent tree. So first of all, pet basic crits increase your critical strike damage. Every third pet basic attack is a guaranteed critical strike, and we're obviously going to have more, with damage further increased by critical strike chance, which we'll have a lot of. And your pet's basic attack has a 20% chance to reset the cooldown of and cause Kill Command to strike a second time for 30% of normal damage. So Brutal Companion becomes an obscenely powerful talent with Pack Leader because of all the downstream effects it has. So yeah, that's worth noting. In terms of gameplay, it's pretty much passive, but it is much like it's the deceptively powerful, is what I'll say. Next up is Bloodshed. So Bloodshed is a 1-minute cooldown. It's not new. We've had it for a while. It's what we always used in a single target builds. It applies an 18-second bleed, which is a dot, I should say. That increases the damage done from your pet by 15% for 18 seconds on that one target on a 1-minute cooldown. This is as we know it, but as we'll see in a moment, in the capstone right below it, there's some interesting stuff about Bloodshed in the War Within. But before that, next comes the choice node for Call of the Wild. It's Wild Instincts, which we know, and Bloody Frenzy. So Bloody Frenzy basically just gives you permanent Beast Cleave while Call of the Wild is up, which is for 20 seconds. And Wild Instincts causes Kill Command to stack a debuff on a target that will increase its damage taken from Kill Command up to 10 stacks of 3% each. So basically, Wild Instincts is a single target damage burst increase, and Bloody Frenzy is basically an AoE burst increase. Both are great for different situations, and both are pretty fun talents. Well, Wild Instincts is fairly passive. Bloody Frenzy is super fun to play with though, because it means during your cooldowns, you can just use your pure single target rotation, which is nice. Alright, next up is Piercing Fangs. So while Beastly Wrath is active, your pet's critical damage dealt is increased by 35%. So we've had this for ages and it's always worth running. It's super powerful and it contributes, along with all these other mechanics that we've discussed, it contributes to super high crit values for Beast Mastery Hunter and Hunter in general. So yeah, just a bit more of that. And of course increases the value of Beastly Wrath significantly. So, because now, like with this Piercing Fang spec, Beastly Wrath is not just 25% flat damage dealt, which is huge, but it's also plus 35% crit damage dealt from your pets, which is also super huge. But yeah, passive, strong capstone, we like it. Next up is the choice node for Bloodshed. So we have the choice of Venomous Bite, which is Bloodshed increases the all damage taken from your pet by an additional 15%. So that brings it to 30% overall increased damage taken from your pet. And Kill Command deals 20% increased damage to the target. And again, this lasts 18 seconds on a 1-minute cooldown, meaning, 30% uptime on 20% increased Kill Command damage and 30% overall pet damage done. And of course, these will stack. So really, it's 50% increased Kill Command damage and 30% increased all other damage from your pet. Super strong for single target. And the next one is Shower of Blood, which is Bloodshed now hits 2 additional nearby targets. So this is sort of an AoE thing, like more of a cleave thing, really. So the fact that it only hits 2 nearby additional targets just seems a little bit weak to me, given that, Beast Mastery is generally quite good at big pulls. And let's say you have a big pull, you're enjoying being a Beast Mastery hunter, you're beast cleaving, kill cleaving out there, your stomp is doing lots of damage. Maybe you're even spec'd into Barrage, which is also basically like soft, uncapped. And then you press Bloodshed and it hits 2 additional nearby targets. And now 3 targets out of 8 are going to, you know, be taking 15% extra damage from your pet, which is fairly strong, but it's still, and the fact that you cannot choose which targets it is, I don't know, I really don't like these AoE capped passive effects that are like super aggressively AoE capped relative to the rest of our kit. I think this would feel better if it was more targets, but like lower damage increase to compensate or something like that. Because right now, like, I could imagine that you might just pick, let's say you even pick Bloodshed in a Mythic Plus scenario. Let's say it's a high Mythic Plus scenario. Like, would you even pick Shower of Blood? Or would you just go with Venomous Bite and get the insane, like, Prio damage increase that this provides? I don't know exactly, but, you know, certainly you're going to consider this. And that leaves the question of what's the point of Shower of Blood then, if you'd rather have the Prio damage from Venomous Bite? So it seems both undertuned and a little bit undercooked, in my opinion. All right. That marks the end of the Beast Mastery spec tree, everybody. 46 minutes on my clock. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let me just recap some of the thoughts I had. So specifically for Beast Mastery. So several effects. One being Murder of Crows, another being Explosive Venom, another being Huntmaster's Call. They rely on these like counters of how many of each, of like in this case Die Beast, or in this case Kill Command, in this case Cobra Shot. You have to manage all these counters to see when you're going to proc these passives, which basically means it's mandatory to have a weak aura for it, which I don't assume is not what Blizzard wants, like Beast Mastery to be like. So I don't like that very much, and I think something could be done to address it. A more simple fix, I wish Die Command and Die Beast would switch places, so that you can benefit from Huntmaster's Call, which I like, without having to invest the point in Die Beast and having that extra button. And as a side note to that feedback, Die Beast, just not that tremendously fun of a button to press. Like, I think it would be fine if it didn't exist, if Die Command was maybe buffed to compensate so that we can still, you know, get some juicy Huntmaster's Call going, because this is one of my favorite new passives of the whole tree. Kindred Spirits, this 2-pointer that increases your max focus, just super lame. Like, it's weak and it's lame at the same time, which is the worst thing a talent can be, right? Because it's not like it's weak but fun to play. It is nothing. It's just a nothing talent, and it's kind of laughable that they ask you to invest 2 points in it for maximum effect. But even if it was a 1-pointer for like the full effect, you probably still wouldn't pick it, because max focus is just not what BM wants. Like, I'd say throw this in the bin, put something else interesting in. You know, with all these things they've added, like, there's a lot to play with. It would take 10 minutes to come up with something far more interesting and far more fun than this that wouldn't be brokenly overpowered, in my opinion. Next up is the whole like AoE kit thing. So I still think 3 points of talent investment for the AoE kit is too much. I really wish that it would be reduced to 1 or 2. That's more of a power thing, but okay, there's other reasons for it too. One thing is that multi-shot is completely worthless without Beast Cleave, so why is it a separate talent? It should just be baked into the spec, and Beast Cleave should be its own talent. Secondly is, Beast Cleave is super lame and passive and all that stuff. Like, it's both weak and lame, just like Kindred Spirits, if you do not have a Kill Cleave as well. So maybe Kill Cleave should just be made baseline into Beast Cleave. Like, either one of those or both of them would go a long way, in my opinion. I personally think that, like, our AoE kit should be Beast Cleave, and that gives us that gives multi-shot something to do for us, and Kill Cleave is baked into it. And that also means that hybrid builds will be much more useful and more fun to play, because okay, now you're gonna pop Barrage and then you're gonna spam some kill commands, and they're actually gonna cleave. Whereas without that, well, they're just not, are they? And the same if you go for like a Bloody Frenzy hybrid build, where you don't have Priest Cleave or anything, except for 20 seconds during your cooldowns. And then you get to do a lot of AoE damage. But outside of that, you have none. That could be fun, but the way it's structured now, it's just a huge single target loss to go AoE still. Smaller than before, but still huge. And it's just like, all of these talents completely rely on each other to be interesting. So the fact that there's 3 of them just feels unnecessary in my opinion. Alright, Next up was Cobra Senses and Killer Cobra. I know you all might say like, okay, who cares? But so I don't want any talents to be dead on arrival. Maybe these talents individually are not dead on arrival, although they probably are. But you know, we'll see what the sims say. But they certainly are pretty much mutually exclusive because they do the same thing in a way that like invalidates the other one, and I just don't think that's optimal design. What else did I have written down here? No, actually, that's pretty much all I have. Some pretty major things. I'll admit. Oh, another thing is like specifically on Explosive Venom. The fact that it encourages this degenerate gameplay of pressing multi-shot on single target, because a Serpent Sting is worth more damage than a Cobra Shot would be. That just seems like a blunder to me on every level. It should probably be changed so that Cobra Shot also applies, and that seems to be a bug. But once again, even if they fix that, you still have the problem that I've mentioned about Huntmaster's Call and A Murder of Crows, which is that occasionally like you'll just proc this like juicy mechanic and it's just going to go to complete waste because they've made it so that you cannot hope to control any of when it does happen, or yeah, anything like that. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers it, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, please remember to provide feedback, because like take all this, think about it a while, agree, disagree, let me know what you think in the comments down below. But crucially, whatever you do think, let Blizzard know so that they cannot say that they didn't hear our feedback, going forward. So, let's grab this opportunity with both hands and get into it. Once again, if you want to support what I do here, please check out my Patreon, where you can support all of these videos and all of the written content I do, this and there, here and there, and on my Discord. And you should join my Discord, which is also in the description below, where you can always communicate with me directly. So yeah, that's been Azortharion, Beast Mastery Hunter Spec 3 review for The War Within. Signing off. Have a nice day, everyone. Bye bye.